How can you become more decisive? That's what I'm talking about today. The reasons you may be struggling with decisiveness and how you can really grow through that so that you can become more decisive and have an easier time making decisions and trusting yourself in those decisions. So, first, I want to talk about what I even mean by being decisive. So, first, it's when you really have clarity, meaning you are clear on what decision you're wanting to make or what decision has to be made. Like you really know what your goals and priorities are in making this decision. So, you have all of that information available to you and you have that clarity. The next piece is having confidence. When you have confidence, it really helps you to be decisive. And having that confidence is really about having that self trust in yourself that you know for your own good, you're making this decision for yourself and that it is the best decision. And you feel really good and confident about it. The next kind of characteristic of decisiveness and being decisive is the timeliness piece. So when you are a more decisive person, you're able to make these decisions within a reasonable time frame. So you're not procrastinating, you're not avoiding it. You have a comfortable, range of time in which you are considering everything and then making the decision or making whatever choice it is that you have to make. Then there is commitment. So being decisive really has to do with being committed with the decision that you made. So you've considered everything, you've considered the pros and cons, whatever it took for you to get to that decision, to that final point, you are committed to the decision that you've made. And then it almost might sound like it's going against it, but the final characteristic of being more decisive is having flexibility. And that means that if new information does come in and you feel it would be best to maybe change that decision that you ultimately originally made, you are able to be flexible and it's not such a scary thing to you if that change kind of comes up for you and if you receive this new information. So it's being committed when it feels right and feels good, but also being flexible when you receive new information or you really decide, hey, I actually do want to change my mind and I am firm in this new decision. So yeah, sometimes we change our minds. And if you do change your mind, that doesn't mean that you're indecisive. But being decisive and being able to change your mind, there is a healthy way to go about that where you're not wishy-washy, but you just know in your heart and soul that now this new decision is the better decision. So why do people really struggle with being decisive? A lot of this has to do with fear. And oftentimes, you're afraid to make the wrong decision. You're afraid of making a decision and sticking with it. And what if you can't change that decision? There's also the fear of change. It is uncomfortable for anyone to go through change. So being decisive and making a decision on something that might be incorporating change in your life can be scary and it can just really put your nervous system on high alert. So it can sometimes be more difficult to be decisive. And we'll go over a little later in this video how you can become more decisive and how you can kind of overcome these challenges. Overthinking or overwhelm. When you have a ton of different information or different choices that need to be made or too many options, you can really overthink your decision and you can become very overwhelmed. So part of that decisiveness and, knowing what you're going after is going to be really picking through all of this information so that you can make it an easier decision for yourself. And so you can kind of overcome that overwhelm and the overthinking part of you. Trying to be perfect. We all want to be perfect. And sometimes there is that fear of what if I make the wrong choice? What if it's not the perfect choice? So that can cause you to not be decisive at all and hold yourself back in whatever area you are making a decision in, your personal life, your business. So when you have that fear of not being perfect, it can hinder you from being confident. And the lack of confidence is also a big contribution to struggling with being a decisive person. Maybe you're referencing old beliefs, old habits, limiting beliefs. If you are referencing these in your mind and they're coming forward when you're trying to be decisive and make a decision that you stand firm and proud in, it can be really hard because you can have, part of you that wants to move forward with this, and then the other part of you that's unsure because you have these old beliefs or these limiting beliefs. And again, that goes really with the change aspect and how change can bring up fear. So be mindful of the thoughts that are happening in your mind and the beliefs, and ask yourself, are these beliefs really true? And are these my own beliefs that I choose to have? Or am I believing some past narrative or story that I used to believe that doesn't serve me now in making this current decision? And then finally is external validation. And I see this one come up a lot because we want to be validated in our decisions. So a lot of times we will bring things to our significant other or our close friend or maybe a family member, and we want them to validate our decisions for us so that we can feel good about the decision we're making. But when you do that and you search for that external validation, you're still not going to feel super decisive because it didn't come from within you. You're listening to other people, you're getting all of that input and energy from others and either taking on their excitement for something or even taking on their fears. So it's very important to be mindful that when you are making a decision for yourself, like you keep that to yourself and do it for yourself. Of course, if there are decisions that you're making in your life that do involve someone else, like a significant other, you of course want to involve them in those decisions. However, it's important to know for yourself first and be decisive in what you're hoping the outcome is so that you can bring that to your partner, to your significant other with the confidence and with the, your reasoning, like this is why, and telling them your side of things and how you see it, rather than just going to them with like this really unsureness and fear and just hoping that like they'll give you the answer. Be firm in what you believe in, what you desire, and what your decision would be, and then talk it out with your partner so that you guys can come to a mutual agreement and then you both feel good about whatever that decision is. So how can you improve your decisiveness? There's a few different ways that I'm going to share that can be really helpful to you so that you can become a more decisive person. First, really decide what your goals are. That means short-term goals, that means long-term goals, and whatever your like values and priorities are, make sure you're very clear in these things. Make sure you know what the goal is of this situation that you are making a decision about, as well as just considering all aspects of life, considering other people in your life that this affects, and have those goals. Like I would even write them down so that you have them and you know, like, okay, this is what I really want. And then it will help you to be more confident in the decision that you make and help you to be more decisive about it. Gather information. If you need to do more research or you do need to maybe talk to someone else who's maybe made a similar decision or who has just more information to give you, that is something that you should do. Don't get stuck in the kind of analysis paralysis stage where you are searching too much for information, but make sure that you have a healthy level of being educated on whatever this is, whatever your decision you're making. Make sure you have enough information about it to make the decision, because you will be more confident in your decision when you have all the background information that you need to make a confident decision. Trust your instincts. Trust that gut feeling you have. Trust your intuition. And really consider, how do I actually feel about this? We're so in our heads sometimes about things that we can kind of separate like our mind from our body, and our body knows. Our body is intuitive. We have gut feelings. We have that intuition within us. So really get clear, get into your body, and like even close your eyes or meditate on it and see how you feel without overthinking it so much. And that brings me to the next point, which is to minimize the overwhelm. And the way that you can minimize overwhelm is by taking out too many options. So overwhelm is when you have too many decisions, too many choices, too many options. So narrow it down as best as you can so that you're not overwhelmed with like the big amount of options there are, or whatever the case may be for your particular situation. But simplify it as much as you can so that you're not choosing or trying to decide between like 6 different things. Really narrow it down to what you know to be true for yourself. And then practice becoming more decisive and a really confident decision maker. It does take practice. I have met people who were so indecisive that, they even had a hard time picking what coffee they want at a coffee shop or just picking a meal at a restaurant. And it creates so much overwhelm in their mind that they don't really trust themselves in their decision making because they have a hard time even making small decisions. I really invite you to practice making small decisions first so that when those larger decisions come up, you have more practice with feeling confident, with being able to, weigh the pros and cons, know you have the information that you need, have your goals set, and be very clear. That will help you become a more confident and decisive person. So practice with something small, even those two examples I just gave. So practice being decisive in ordering at a restaurant or going to a coffee shop. And if that requires you to prepare in advance, that's the same thing as, gathering information, educating yourself on what the options are, narrowing down the options. This kind of framework can really be applied to anything. So I invite you to try practicing your decision making by doing all of these steps that I kind of laid out for you and then feeling confident in your decision. And then keep doing that. Just keep repeating the process because it will help you be a more decisive person. And lastly, I want to just invite you to really cultivate a growth mindset. And having a growth mindset will allow you to see things differently. Being so focused on growth and learning will open you up to, first of all, seeing failure as not such a bad thing, seeing failure as opportunities to learn, opportunities to grow, and that there are other options and opportunities out there that you just haven't gotten to yet. So when you're in a more growth mindset, you're able to be decisive because you understand that even if something doesn't go as perfectly planned, you're still growing, you're still learning, you're still developing as a human, and all of that is positive. So I really ask you to redefine what failure means to you, because if you think that some decision could lead to failure and you see failure as a very bad thing, it's going to feel paralyzing. You're not going to want to make that decision, or you'll make decisions out of fear that will ultimately end up leading you to failure anyways, because you weren't clear in the whole decision-making process to begin with. So see failure as just room for opportunity and room for growth. Accept that some decisions may not be perfect and be willing to accept change, even in the discomfort. Change is uncomfortable, but once you get through that discomfort, there is so much growth that can happen. So apply all of these tips and all of this information to your everyday life. Again, making decisions for yourself, making decisions for your business, whatever it may be. Becoming a more decisive person will allow you to be more confident, to really make progress and work towards what you want. It will help you reaching your goals and ultimately build that confidence to be a more decisive person.